Thank you for coming to my home. Uncle Louis and Miss Lucille were a big inspiration in my life. My name is Denise Louise Pease. I'm a resident of Corona. I met Uncle Louis, I must have been about 8 or 9 years old. And I met him at the barbershop on 106th Street because my father used to take me with him on Saturdays. He was a friend of Uncle Louis. That's how I got to call him, because a lot of people at that point in time were calling him Satchmo. And my mother, I came home one day and told my mother I met Uncle Satchmo, and she said, "You are not allowed to call him Satchmo. I really want to call you Uncle Satchmo, but my mom won't let me call you Satchmo. But can I call you Uncle Louis?" And I remember him laughing and asking my father, "Where did you get this one from?" Uncle Louis and Miss Lucille really had the impetus to give me to have a life of endless possibilities. And that was beyond here in Corona. My father was a friend of Uncle Louis. He became a college professor. He was a Tuskegee Airman, and he played the violin. Uncle Louis found out my father played the violin, and he was going to school. He had just been hired at, I think, Suffolk Community College or RCA Institutes. So he called my father the professor, which he eventually became before he retired. He had met Dr. Carter G. Woodson. In 1946, Dr. Woodson and Mother Rosetta Gaston introduced William Henry Pease Jr. to Louise Marion Caswell, and I'm the result. Miss Lucille encouraged my mother to go back to school. While she had been one of the first graduates of Fashion Institute of Technology, she went back to school to Queens College. And she became an early childhood education teacher. But she developed schizophrenia when I was very young. And I think that's why Miss Lucille kind of embraced me a little when I became a young adult teenager. This is my picture when I was the age that I really got close to Miss Lucille. When I was probably in my late teens and early 20s, I really got to know Miss Lucille. You know, and it was after Uncle Louis passed away. At first, she didn't know that I was William Pease's daughter, but I had told her the story of my mother having schizophrenia. And she kind of embraced me. As a result, I became one of the youngest members of the North Shore chapter of Negro Business and Professional Women. And she gave me this one in one of my birthdays, and she gave me this one. She said, "Women always had to have fine crystal and a lot of perfume." My love for crystal came from Miss Lucille. I think I went a little overboard, but a lot of the inspiration of my home came from Miss Lucille. My family moved into this house in 1961. We were one of the few Black families on the block at that time. And so when I came to this house, this is one of the few houses that is still standing and probably not overly renovated at the time that Miss Lucille and Uncle Louis lived in Corona. You know what, I think my most favorite memory was being here with my mother and my father. I think that's why I've kept the house. And I think that's why I gravitated to Miss Lucille when I was about 15 or 16 years old, because she was going to teach me how to become a proper lady. I always wanted to go to this school, the Our Lady of Sorrow School. You know, when I was growing up, going to a parochial school was like a leg up. It was really a leg up. Because also, I went to school during what they call the Princeton Plan. And that was something that's not talked about, but it was really desegregating the New York City public schools. So I was in 92 initially, and then I was bused to PS 89 in Jackson Heights because that was a predominantly white school. But as I said, when Uncle Louis would come home, the kids would come from all over, particularly these blocks, because it was the 50-cent pieces. Now, Miss Lucille used to have her blue Cadillac in here. If she was driving to like Junction Boulevard or going shopping in Flushing or something, after I got my license and I had a small car, I would drive my car here, park it, and then I would come in and she would drive the car out. She would drive the car out and up the block, and maybe when we got to about maybe 100, where she didn't know anyone, we would change places. Right. And then when we would go to Junction, before we would get to where she was actually going, we would change places again so people could see her driving. I always wanted to tell her, Miss Lucille, no one in this community has a Capri Blue car. So if they see me driving it or you driving it, but see, I was growing up that you didn't counteract the elders. Now this was the exact color of a car. I didn't realize when she gave it to me, it was a scarf. And when I got older, I went to, I belonged to an organization called Financial Women's Association. And we took a course at INSEAD in Fontainebleau, France. This was in the 1980s, maybe 1990s. And they had showed me a scarf. And I said, I think I got that scarf at home, but I didn't pay any attention to it. But then as I started collecting Hermes scarves, I knew that I had this scarf and she had given me this scarf. But I didn't realize it was an Hermes scarf when she gave it to me, He was not as gregarious as he would seem to be to the public when he was entertaining. I mean, he was friendly. He would joke with you, laugh with you, hug you. But he was a neighbor. He was a man, and but he wasn't like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. No, he was a little bit more subdued than that most of the time. I mean, if he hadn't seen Daddy for a long period of time because he knew my mother wasn't well, it would be like, hey, here's the professor, here comes the professor, where you been? At that point in time, because when I was younger, I didn't know Miss Lucille. Mm-hmm. I just knew Uncle Louis. And then as I got older and I met Miss Lucille, because he used to always talk about his lovely wife. And I think she instilled in me a couple of things: to aim high, never forget your community. Always to try to achieve the best. Don't let anyone kind of tell you what you can't do. I remember during the time of a busing of children from the community to predominantly white public schools, he was very concerned because while he thought we may be getting a better education, he was concerned about the influence that busing would have. Both of them were. I mean, and I was a child then, but I know that my father would come here, because my father at that time was studying to be an educator, to talk about the impact that would have on the community. And I think that was one of the reasons that I started my career here at, it was called the Corona East Elmhurst Community Corporation, and then it became part of Elmcor. I think being with them and being with my father, particularly, and my mother, taught me that you cannot outgrow your community. I think that's one of the reasons I'm still here, living here. As Miss Lucille got older, she would allow me to come over and help her get dressed. I think that also helped me know what fine clothing was all about, It was no more going to Alexander's. She was loving but precise. And I think she recognized something in me that she wanted to encourage. She encouraged me to not let anyone to confine me in terms of my boundaries. She encouraged me to reach high. I don't think I would have done the global traveling that I did And I think that was because of Uncle Louis and Miss Lucille. And as I mentioned, I went to Africa for the first time when I was 25 years old. And one of the things I learned about this of my what I call my South African family was Uncle Louis was so very important to them in their fight against apartheid because people say he didn't do enough. He did a whole lot for civil rights internationally because they said they remembered that he would not play unless it was an integrated audience. Because at that time they wanted him to do maybe something for the white audience, but something in a little place in either Soweto or in outside of Johannesburg or wherever he was playing to play to the black audience. And he said no. He said no. And he was very firm about that. I would ask her, are you proud of me? I think she would have been proud of me serving in the Obama administration. But I think she would have been even more proud of something I had done more recently for President Biden, which was being on the commission, the Presidential Advisory Commission for Educational Excellence, Equity, and Economic, opportunities for Black Americans, because that's what she was all about. She wanted all students to have the best education that they could get, and nothing to constrain that. I mean, for a child growing up in Corona during those times, and even maybe during this time, I've met 4 U.S. presidents, shaking their hands and had a chance to talk to them. I had a chance to meet Bishop Tutu as a prayer partner, Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, the first woman president of an African country, Madam Sharif. So I have been very, very blessed. I've been very, very blessed. And I want to extend that blessing to others.